Dr. Alan Corbiere.
Nanabojo Anishinaabe Need so jik benendo dem wedem chiking donjaba Bojo Chinandam dash minwa gi bijaya mampe Nipissing minwa dash apchagor migwa chandam minwa gi wikijio nagowa we the batama ga bijwe bak mampe shike minising Nin dash apchago and dinagas. Apchago and dinagas kaimshe do neta Anishinaabemsi. Kaimshe dokskitosi mushkin we Anishinaabemya. Bangi etago gikendan mandage Anishinaabemowin. Misa enje Anishinaabemya. Ensigi gak dash gakke minwa gakke Anishinaabem minwa doke Anishinaabem. Myself, I said my name is the Fisher in Ojibwe, and my dodem is that rough grouse. I'm from Chiging, and I said that I'm pretty poor in my language. I have a little bit of it. But I want to urge you all here to try and learn as much as you can from your people. Ode enjabaya, ode shkunagaring, gyabe bejik neta Anishinaabemot ginegie. At home, we lost another good speaker, somebody who was fully fluent in our language. And eshkam dash nemaja wak gunda neta Anishinaabemjik. And these ones that speak fully and fluently, they're leaving us. And you have to, we have to work harder to bring that back. So I urge you all to do that as well. So myself, I try to speak a bit every day. Mbokaje Anishinaabem, I say. Nan godanong dash napadom. I make little mistakes. I say things a bit funny sometimes, but I don't mind getting laughed at or teased a bit about it. And actually, I do want to get corrected when people notice I'm making a mistake, because that's how you learn. So for a long time, I didn't want to make a mistake, and I didn't say anything until I had it perfect in my mind before I said anything. So, but now I'm like, okay, there's too many people leaving. We have to do this now. So there's so much to our language that people have heard about, and they heard people talk a bit here in the lodge this morning. Mi nui mi gwechu akagonda eskuda kejik minoa dasha ga jitojik medeogan minoa dash negomojik So me too, I want to thank those ones that are watching the fire, the ones that sang, the ones that drummed, and the ones that talked there this morning to help us all. And that's what this one old man used to say, Kanada madame, kakino madame, we mishkauzi me. So he says, if we teach each other, we talk to each other, we help each other, that's how we're going to be strong. So that's the same thing. Usually what I try to tell people, Bangi dash the Anishinaabemowin jiganan bangi etta. I only hold a little bit of that language. The bishko ojashk mi wepi moshka ang mandake. The same as that when that I only hold a little bit of that language. But just like that muskrat, when he brought that dirt up from the bottom of the flood, that's when this whole world was recreated. So if each of us bring up a bit of that and hold on to that language and use it as much as we can, as much as you have, use it. Migo geni dash chinandama, migo chandama, gyabe ba ya at gonda nata Anishinaabemowin. So myself, I was thinking about this. I got asked to come here again. And sometimes I say to my wife and kids, I don't know if they know what I'm saying. Nobody asks questions. But I keep getting asked to come back. So maybe there's this trying to figure me out. What the hell is this guy talking about? Bring him back again. So, ngake ansoke. Jajago dashingi bigit nao sema shkudeng. I put that tobacco in that fire already this morning. Minoa dash gishkantak and that cedar boughs. Jajago ngi kwajamakundak atsokanak. So I asked those ones to help as well. And I wanted to tell a story. I can't tell the whole story, but I want to tell bits of this story. Because when Earl asked me to talk, he was asking about our positions in governance, or our offices, what we would say our offices in governance. So I thought, how am I going to do this? I could do a PowerPoint and I could, I forgot I was supposed to make a handout. Anyway, but I thought, I'm going to tell a story. Gaantsoke. And my one buddy, Terry DeBosque from Chiging, used to make me laugh. We'd go and talk to Mishikamba and Anishinaabe. And Terry would say, after we go visit Gordba, Terry says, I wish he'd just give a straight answer once in a while instead of a story or a riddle or... Awenenge, Ouija, we nando bania. Miwe, gaje biba geto mekanak. This is a story of the snapping turtle. And he went up a hill. Gi kwam majwe maba mekanak. Godingie maba mekanak ki bayagie. This snapping turtle, he's walking around. Gi kwam majwe wajing. He climbed on top of the mountain. Mio de gi bibagit. That's what he yelled. Who is going to accompany me when I go on the warpath? That's what he yelled. Mabadash mekanak gi no ndwanoe bidas masenit. Then he heard somebody come walking towards him. And he's thinking, Mabadash gi medwe nakwet tagon. He heard somebody answer, Nin sa kawiji in we nanda banean. Me, it is I who will accompany you on the warpath. Kaim she wabma sin. He didn't see who said that yet. We badash bizaga koom maba. And then he saw makwa giwabman, makwan giwabman. He saw that bear come out. So that bear come out, mikanak dash gi nan. The turtle says to the bear, Jinomoshin, kagwe wiji in. Show me what you're going to do, pi migating. Show me what you're going to do when we fight. Mabadash makwa gi desan mittegon. The bear goes right up to that tree. Just starts slashing that tree with his claws. Negek, all that negek, the bark goes flying, the branches go flying, then even the pulp starts flying. And he starts pushing that, and he knocks that tree over. Up to go gize gize. Ma mekanaktash gi gosan makwan. The turtle got scared. He sees what that bear is doing. He thinks to himself, oh, this guy's too strong. Ma badash mekanaktash gi nan makwan. So he says to that bear, oh, kan sick, kai mam da, kan sick, mi ga ding. Gi wen. You're just going to get killed. Just go home. He tells him, go home. You're going to get killed on the battlefield. Meanwhile, Yajo Wabang, next day, Baba Mikanak, Gi Kwam Majwe, meanwhile, Gida Jew, Anin Kadok, Gida Din, Anin Kadok, Gida Pik, Anin Kadok. Mikanak Dash, Mio de, meanwhile, Gi Bibaget. Owenen, Ge we Giak, we Nando Banea. Who is going to come? Who is going to join me when I go on the warpath? Again, he hears this big sound come running through the bush, scraping and crashing through the woods. Gim de no kwetta got maba mekanak. Ninsa kawiji in. Nando bani in. It is I who will join you on the warpath, he says. And that's that moose. Most tashkibe sakum, the one he comes, that moose, he's the one who comes out of the woods. He appears. And that moose comes charging right at that Mikanak. And again, he scared him. Comes right close to him. And it breathes on him, and he looked like he was going to headbutt him and send him flying. Mabadash Mikanak, gi zegeze, Maba Mikanak, gi kusan. Moves on. So he's scared of him. Ha, gi wen. Go home. Gadant sego. Miga ding. You'll just get killed on the battlefield. You go home, he says to him. Meanwhile, goding. Mabadasha mekanak yi biba ge daje gedap kong. He yelled again on top of that hill. Awen ed. Ge wijiak. We nando banea. Who's going to accompany me when I go on the warpath? Ni nawe. He looks around. He doesn't see anybody. But he hears somebody answering him. Kumapi dash iwabman squadensi san. And he sees, the Mikanak, he sees all these little turtles. They're called the painted turtles. Those little ones. They all come up to go batin kunda squadensi bajajik. All these little painted turtles come to him there. And he says to him, Jinomushik ejemigaziek. Show me how you're going to fight. And then they say, now how? And they all put their head and arms and legs back in their shell. Aho, he says, Maba Mikanak dash. Ngim Kowak dash. Ndo Jimaganishamak. I found my warriors, my soldiers, he says. So that's what he says. We're going to go on the warpath. Kajame ode Nishinabe ode sing. Osode. Beyond over there, there's a town of Anishinaabe. Mi ode kamigazme. That's where we're going to fight. So he says, Awenen dash, awenen mjinwe wit, awenen mjinwe mit, awenen mjinwe wit. Who here is the Mjinwe? And this is one of the words that we no longer use in our language and in our governance. Who here is the chief's attendant? Who here is the pipe bearer for the chief? Who here is the one that carries the message for the chief? Who is the Mjinwe here? Bejik mesquadensis gi bejamagon. Nin dash got Mjinwe. I am a Mjinwe, he says to him. Oh, how? So, it became nighttime. And then when it became nighttime, Maba Mikanak Ginan or the Jinwe Man. Then he says to his Mijinwe, now how? We're going to go over and we're going to do a reconnaissance mission. We're going to see this Anishinaabe town. And we're going to inform our soldiers, my soldiers, we're going to tell them how we're going to do, what we're going to do. And he says, now how? So they went out, they saw how that town is laid out, but that Mikanak, he wanted to go earlier. Gibib Skabiwak and Jigabeshawat Gunda Squadron Sisa. So they came back. Mabadish Mikanak gi non one way negaminit. The Mikanaki heard somebody singing. Mishike jish, Mishike jish. Kan sego me o de Anishinaabe dinwe sing. Anishinaabe dinwe sing. That's what that Squadensis is singing. He's saying, instead of Mikanak, he calls him Meshika in this song. We are going to be killed over there in the little town. Dimweik Gishkan Madon. The old ladies will use a cedar bag. That's what he says when he's singing. So Mikanak Dashgi Jaman no Negaminit. This Mikanak goes to the one who's singing. He says, what are you singing? Anish Enjinagamyen. Why are you singing that? The me we God napawe ya. God napawe ya we. That's what I dreamed. Here, this is the word. Boajage, we usually say that's a dream. Boadan, you dreamed it. Boana, you dream her. But apwe is a type of dream that's ominous. That's what they say. It's an ominous dream. Ndapwe, mabadash, squadesi gikada. I had a foreboding dream. And it's that we're going to be killed. And these old ladies are going to put us in these cedar bags. So, mabadash mikanak, mina gagete. And he goes up to him real close. Maba Mikanak gin san noe, squadensi san. Mikanak then killed that one. Killed him, took him off, and threw him in the bush, in the ditch. Threw him in the ditch. Nobody else heard him. So when they went away and they went to their next day, they went to war. Jamagane shak. Mijinoe, minwa dash mikanak kida. Nin, meow se ogema, nin. I am the war chief. Meow se, that means the one who walks. Meow, it means exactly. Ose, how somebody walks. And this is a word they used to say for a war chief. Meow se wenene. The one who walks with exacting purpose. Now we just say Migazo Ogema, the fighting chief, war chief. But the one who walks with exacting purpose, that's the war chief. And that's what they said, Mikanak says, Nin dash miao sewenene. Quinoa jemagane shak. Yous are all the soldiers. The other thing he said, Jamagan, that's an old word for a spear or a lance. That's what they're named after. That Jamagan Shak, why they call them that. So sure enough, they go over the next day. Maba Mijinoe Minwa Miao Set. They go over to that Anishinaabe town. Maba Mikanak Gin San Anishinaabe. He killed Anishinaabe over there. And then she was discovered. And this old man then says, we are being attacked. Everybody were being attacked. And he saw Mikanak, meanwhile, Squadensis, babam kwewak. They had left their tracks all around. So they started trying to track that Mickinock, and they started tracking them squadencies. Then that old man realized it's a snapping turtle and a squadencies that's attacking them. So that's when he says, Dimwayuk, be dok, gishkandamo. Bring your cedar bark bags. That's what he says to those old ladies. Squadencies sak batinok. So sure enough, all those old ladies come, and they see that's when all those Jamagana shuk, Bidagushnoak, all those soldiers then show up, and the old ladies start putting those turtles in those cedar bags. And then that Mickinock says to his Mijinwe, I think we're going to get caught. And he starts singing a song himself, and he says, Waawiindamaagewin, mitigo nagan, Waawiindamaagewin, mitigo nagan. I see a wooden bowl. Then he says to him, Aha, shka bewas, nadmo shin. Nga gaz, name mitigo naganing. I'm going to hide under this wooden bowl. Kin dash gijibwen, shka bewas. So he says to him, shka bewas, lift the bowl, I'm going to hide under it, but you run away. So notice in the story that Mijinwe, when it was a chief, he called him Mijinwe when he was filling out kind of orderly duties with the soldiers. But when he was in danger and he had to rely upon his nidok, and that Mickinock started singing that song, that's when the Mijinwe changed into Oshkabewis. And that's when the Mijinwe, instead of becoming, in a sense, a diplomatic or a practical chief's attendant, what in English they would call an aide-de-camp to the general, he actually became a ceremonial helper to help him. They say, Nidokaza, Mage Nidoke. That Mickinock, he then became a ceremonial helper so that Mickinock could hide himself. Anyway, I see that I got 10 minutes. The other part is, I just wanted to show you and tell you that story. The reason being is when we're talking about, on the one hand, we're talking about using our tools, our ways. And this is how the elders used to do things, is they would answer your questions with stories. The other thing I heard last week, I was in Rama, and Gajauba Sem Kwa Giyaode, and Fred Kelly was over there, and he sang a song, and then another fellow sang a song, and then I was reminded of what this old man said to us at a ceremony one time. He said, long time ago, Chajaja Dashko, mi go at the Jichigayat Gonda Kenziik. Sometimes the old men, when they would meet in a lodge, Gaige go gi could see wak. They didn't say anything. They just sang. They all just sang songs to each other. And then they were done their meeting. First one sang one song that determined what the next guy was going to sing. And then what the next guy was going to sing determined on those two songs. The third song depended on the previous three one, then the fourth. So it went all the way around. There's how many songs they knew that they then could answer, and that's how they communicated to each other. They talked with their songs, not with their words. Anyway, that's the importance. And when you get the old-fashioned adzoke, yatzoket, you get an old-fashioned storyteller. There's songs in those stories. I'm not saying that I'm one of those, but that's what you'll get. So that Mickinock, he ends up tricking them. all those squadesi sucks, the old ladies make soup. I'm going to cut short here. The old ladies make soup. They cut them off. They find Mickinock, and they say to him, "Oh, we'll throw him in the fire. We'll throw him in the fire. Punish him." And he says, "No, don't throw me in the fire. I'm going to hit all the embers, and my tail's going to flick up the Muskokajewok. I'm going to flick up those embers, and I'll burn your children." "Oh, yeah, that's right. You might burn the kids." "Okay, we won't throw them in the fire." And then they said they have a pot of boiling water there. He says, "Well, we will throw him in that boiling water." So they're dragging him. And he says, "Well, if you throw me in there, I'm just going to use my tail again, and you're going to splash around, and I'm going to splash your kids. They're going to burn." "Oh, yeah, we won't do that." Then they finally say, "Let's throw him in the lake. Let's throw this Mickinock in the lake." "No, don't do that, he says. So he's scratching on the ground, he's holding on everything, and they're pulling him, and he says, "No, please don't throw me in the lake. I hate that." So they think they got him, they're going to punish him. They grab him, and he's holding on to the trees, he's holding on to the rocks, he's holding on to the grass. They finally, all four men grab him, and then they throw him in the lake. And then as he's going through the air, he starts laughing, and he says, "This is where I live." And so he takes off. So he's able to take off. Anyway, there's more to that story, but I just want you to think more. The why I told it is because of that transition from that Mejinawe to Oshkabewis, as well as he says, "I found my soldiers, Jamaganishak," and that he was the Miaose Ogima. He was the war chief as well. But with my remaining time, I want to talk about this fella, Jingwak. Jingwak Mage Jigwa Kons, Chief Little Pine from Garden River, of course, one of the signatories to this treaty, 1850 treaty. And I actually believe that if he didn't really take a firm stand, we would have had a lot less in that treaty. And then also, we may not even had a treaty because they didn't want it, like how what Earl was saying and Mike was saying, Zhashk, that they were kind of dealing with the types that are in the provincial government right now. And they weren't actually going to actually enter into treaty. They didn't want to go with a treaty. But Jigwa Kons and Nabanegojing actually took extra effort to bring them to the table to get an actual treaty. Anyway, Mabadasha Jigwa Kons, mi wepi gi shkinwe with Pane dash gim kadeke. When this guy was a young man, he fasted. Nibna ching dash gim kadeke. He fasted many times. Niogonagok, Nanogonagok, Nangodonong, Madasogonagok. So sometimes he would fast 4 days, sometimes 5, sometimes 7, or sometimes 10. But he kept fasting each time. And what was reported at one time, one of his fasts that he had, when he was on his 10th day or his 5th day, whatever it was, mi wepi gi waseyabendang. They say that, some say that waseyabendang, you clearly see what you're dreaming. You clearly perceive that. Others just nabendang, you see it. But when you say waseyabendang, that means it's just so vivid and clear. Anyway, he's in his fast. He is summoned. So he looks around, he hears somebody saying, Jigwa Kons, Bejan, Jigwa Kons, Kshkozin. So he looks around, Nenabe Mabe Jigwa Kons. He doesn't see anybody, but he still hears that voice saying, come. And he looks towards the east, and when he looks to the east, he sees this road, and this road is lit along the way. So he knows then to go out, he open the door, Mikas, and he follows that road. And that road is lit, and on either side it's dark. He's going up there. And he keeps going up, and he realizes he's going up into the sky, this Jigwakons. Then when he gets up there, Wigwam te ishpeming. There's a wigwam up there, there's a house. And he goes walking towards that house. He sees he sees somebody dressed all in white. And that fella says to him, I called you here to show you something. Bijan, Majan. So he comes over, and then they look out from that house. They look to the east. Gasmon gamagon, batinat gasmon gamagon shkudeng. There's all these tents set up in this field. And in those tents, he says, on this side, all these tents have kings and their soldiers. And on this side, miao seo gemak, meanwhile wedasek, meanwhile gitchadak, meanwhile jamaganeshak. Over here, this is Anishinaabemowin's side. And you have there wedasek, that's a brave. You got a gitchadak, the warriors. And you have jamaganeshak, those are their soldiers. You got all these people here. He says, that man in white, says to him, one day you will take your seat amongst them. And they're having a big war council. Those kings on this side and those Nishnabek, Migazo, Gemak. You will take your seat amongst them one day. And when you do, you eventually too will be held in high regard for all that you have accomplished. So he says, for you, in order that you remember what I said to you, come in, Manda Wapshkigan. I give you this white banner, this flag. He gave that to Jawakons, and he says, but now you have to remember me. If you remember me, I will remember you. So that means he has to feast them every year. So Jawakons feasted that one who was arrayed in white, feasted him all the time. And they say that since that day, Jawakons Gidapnan Gyabebe Jignozwin Nishinaabenowin. And at that time, he took another name, Zalgajiweose. Zalgajiweose, that means when the sun rises and it's rising over a mountain. And that's talking about the sun. Zalgajiweose, the sun comes rising over the mountain. It doesn't mean she'll be coming around the mountain. But you see that name, all you bingo players, when you go to Garden River, you go to their bingo hall. That's what it says on that sign. Zalgajiweose bingo hall. No, it doesn't say bingo hall. It just says Zalgajiweose. And so he took that second name to remember the sun. And then so that's what his children had told this travel writer. They told this travel writer named George Johann Cole. They told him that story about Jawakons' first fast. And then afterwards, they told him that. He ended up telling the Indian agent in the States named Henry Rowe Schoolcraft, he told him, he says, the ancient people, get the Anishinaabek, panegim kadekewak. The ancient Anishinaabek always fasted. And when they fasted, they sought, especially if they wanted to be a war chief, they sought the sun, Gizis Nido. This is what this Jawakons said. they sought the sun nido. So those that wanted to be a war chief sought the sun, and he said, because the sun illuminates everything, you can see everything. But not only that, when that sun gets higher, you can see everything. So the way when I read that, I thought he's talking about strategic planning, tactical use of information. So instead of a war chief being blessed by a bear, or a war chief being blessed by a thunderbird, or a hawk, or an eagle, the eagle can see from above and can see far, like the sun, but the sun can illuminate things. Waawiindamaagewin, that's what they call that clear vision. So that's who he sought at that time, as to be that Miaoseo Ogema. But when he was a young man, Jagwakons went through the ranks, as we would say now. At that time, he was just a Jamaganish. And then later on in life, he became, some say, Gigado Nene. And that term still exists in our modern parlance. Gigado Nene, that's a counselor, speaking man. But they also would say Netawet. Netawet is an orator. So he served as an orator to his chief, and he also served as a Mejinoe to his chief as a young man. So Shagwakons, when he was young, he was Jamaganish, a Mejinoe. Then as he got older, he became Netawe or Netawe Gigadat, the orator. Eventually, he became Ogema. He became Ogema. But he also participated and was initiated. He was a midday. It was well known that he was a midday as well. But not only that, he was a wabano, a seer. Those are the ones that operate the Jiskan. So he belonged to both of those societies, and it took determination and dedication to accomplish those, and then multiple fasts to do that, to get that Waawiindamaagewin, to have that clear vision of what's to be done. So he was a wabano, he was a midday, he was an orator, he was a warrior, he was a war chief, and then he was a chief, Ogema. The last thing that I'll say he was, Ogema Gigada. And this is what I was trying to get people to adopt, because now we say Grand Chief. We say Grand Chief in English for our representatives. But in the councils, it used to be apparently Ogema Gigada, Chief Speaker. And it wasn't a hereditary position. It was the chiefs got together and they said, in this council, you kindash gato netawe, gato netagigit. You are a good speaker. In this council, when we meet with the British or the French or the Chamokmanek, you are going to speak on behalf of us. And you see that in all these council proceedings, that people end up referring to, he spoke on behalf of the Ojibwe at this meeting, or he spoke on behalf of the Ojibwe Odawa and Parawarme. And that's Ogema Gigada. And at the Robinson Huron Treaty proceedings, this is the role Jagwakons filled. He was a Gemal Gigada. He was the chief speaker at that time. So he ended up, so these are all the different roles that he played. But he played these roles also, of course, due to natural abilities, but pursuing that vision, finding that, having that vision, seeking that vision, attaining that vision, and consistently working towards that vision. That's what it took. And so when Earl asked me, how do we look at these positions of governance and how did they play out? How did this work? I really can't tell you the answer per se, but I can tell you that story. And then I can tell you who, by a historic example of how one man went through this and the different roles he played throughout his life, and how he enacted Anishinaabe Nawkanagewin, how he enacted that Anishinaabe law, and how others would say Nido Nawkanagewin, the Spirit's law. So I'm a bit over time, but miigwech gibizindo yak kine enchiak minwa dash gibija yak mampe Nipissing minwa dash miigwech optical miigwech and dam dash gi wikijivane gowa miigwech.